Hello everybody, this is the Fredster, and I got some mail today from the company Apple. The new iPhone 8 Plus came out today, together with its smaller brother, the iPhone 8, and I'm going to test it for you from the viewpoint of a photographer and cinematographer. Smartphones are getting more and more powerful, not only when you think about the cameras that are in here, but also when you think about the processor and the sensor. And yeah, a lot of people are asking, do you really need such a powerful processor? Because the processor in the iPhone, they say, is the strongest in any smartphone in the world. Do you really need such a strong processor in a smartphone? And a lot of people say no, because they say this is almost as powerful as a laptop, and you don't use a phone the same way you use a laptop. But on the other hand, especially for photography and cinematography, you need very strong processors. This phone has some smart portrait modes that need a lot of calculation and strong processor for that. And if you also think about the video modes, this camera features, or this phone features, 4K and 60 frames per second. So that needs a lot of processing power, because you're basically generating 500 megabytes every minute. So especially for photographers and cinematographers, you need this kind of powerful stuff, and also you never know where technology is going. So let's have a look at it today. We will look at it here in the studio without the professional light, just using some available light, but testing the portrait modes, the smart portrait modes that are featured in this iPhone 8. And then we're going to go outside, get some nice product shots of this baby here, and we're also going to do some video. I'm hoping to see some skaters around in the skate park. Then we can do some slow motion video, also compared to the iPhone 7, which I have in my pocket here, my current day-to-day phone. And yeah, we're going to see how these two compare. Okay, so let's do the unboxing and let's have a look at this baby. Let's see how we get started here. Suck. Oh, that's nice. Very easy to remove the plastic here. Now let's have a look at it. Designed by Apple in California. Little quick start guide, and there it is. So let's pull it out. We have the charger. Even though you can do some wireless charging, or you can do Qi standard wireless charging with it, you also have the standard plug-in charger. You don't have the wireless charger, you have to buy that apart, but there's very cheap ones. You have the wireless earplugs, the adapter to also use your older earplugs with a cinch adapter. Okay, so here's the phone. This is how it looks. The back, very elegant. So you immediately notice that it does feel different than the iPhone 7. I thought, or I was afraid when I saw the pictures, that it would be exactly the same, but it does feel noticeably heavier than the iPhone 7. And with the glass in the back, it also feels very elegant, very high class. So what can I say about the look and feel? It's a little bit of same but different. This is the fourth iPhone generation that has the same form factor. It was the iPhone 6, the 6S, then the 7, and then the 8. So some people, some cynics are saying this is more of an iPhone 7S, or even of an iPhone 6S SS. It's true that it's exactly the same form factor. You can even use the same cases as for the iPhone 7 Plus. It has a very thick chin and front here, which in other phones like Samsung you don't have that anymore. So yeah, you can criticize that, but still it's a very nice phone. The battery lasts about 1.5 days, despite this phone having more functions than the iPhone 7. So they even slightly improved the battery performance, even though it has more features, which is pretty good and pretty impressive. Then regarding the display, not very impressive when you look at the specs. Still, I personally think, and I know a lot of Android users are going to comment below, but I personally think that the iPhone has the best screens on the market and has had it for a long time. It also now has True Tone display, which means that it will detect the lighting surrounding you, whether it's available light, sunlight in the morning, midday, evening, or whether you're inside. It just detects, let's say, the light temperature, and it adapts the display to that. A lot of people love it, other people hate it. In terms of the specs of the cameras, there's two cameras here in the back on the iPhone 8 Plus, and there's one front-facing camera. The front-facing camera has 7 megapixel. You can use that for FaceTime, for WhatsApp, Skype, whatever you want to use it for. And the back-facing lenses there are two lenses in there. One is a wide-angle lens with a 1.8 aperture, and it is optically stabilized, which means you get more stable photos, less handshake in the photos. Now, the thing I don't understand is on the telephoto lens, which has a maximum aperture of 2.8, f2.8, they don't have optical image stabilization, which is really a shame because this is where you really need it. If you have a telephoto lens, it detects handshake much more quickly than a wide-angle lens. So yeah, that's a little bit of a shame. And also the aperture point. I was expecting to get a much more, let's say, wide open aperture on both lenses. So 1.8 on both lenses, or maybe even 1.4 or something like this. It's 1.8 and 2.8, so not an improvement compared to the iPhone 7 Plus. That's a bit of a shame. Let's look at some more of the camera specs. Overall, the pictures, I'm understanding, are looking more saturated. There's HDR is turned on all the time, high dynamic range, so meaning that you don't lose details neither in the shadows nor in the highlights of the picture. I don't know if I'm happy about that. I don't like HDR all the time. I didn't like it on the old iPhone 7. They say it's improved HDR, so maybe I like it now. We'll have to see that. Then there's the portrait mode, which you already had on the iPhone 7, which basically means it kind of mimics a shallow depth of field using wide open camera lenses. It's not a real optical effect, but it's a digital effect that they do by just blurring the background and keeping the foreground of your subject sharp. They say it's improved, but the real new thing is not the portrait mode, but the portrait lighting. The portrait lighting mimics all of the effects of this professional light and the different setups that you have depending on where you position the light, and it does that by just detecting your face, analyzing it, and then just simulating it. And some people are saying it's not that good yet. We will have to see it here by testing it in the studio, and yeah, it's still in beta mode, so I'm not sure what to expect. We will see it right now. There's 3 different modes, or 4 depending on how you look at it. There's the studio mode, the contour mode, and then there's the stage light. And stage light you have normal with color, and a stage light mono, which is black and white. And then the last thing about taking photos with the iPhone, it has an advanced ISP, which basically says it detects or it analyzes your frame before you take a picture. So it detects whether there are people, whether it's a portrait, whether it's a person running in the background, and it also analyzes the sun, if you have bright light or if you have shadows. So it gets everything prepared, so once you record, everything is already prepared for that, so you get faster autofocus and better HDR. Right, those are the improvements. Last but not least, let's talk about the video mode. You have some improvements here. On the 4K, you can go now to 60 frames per second, which means you can do some slow-mo with 4K, which is pretty amazing. You can go down to 50% or even 40% of the natural normal speed, real-time speed with 4K. On the iPhone 7 it was only 30 frames per second, and with full HD, so 1080p, you can go now to 240 frames per second. So that means you can slow down the video to 10% of the normal speed. Right, that's pretty amazing. It was 120 before on the iPhone 7, which is also pretty good. You can go down to 20% of the normal speed, but of course 240 is even better. So let's go to the studio first and then to the skate park. Alright, that's me talking from the off. And let's have a look here. When you switch from photo to portrait, you can now give it a try with all the different lighting options. We're going to start with natural light, which is the first and standard option to start with. So let's give it a go. It's self-timed here, counting down. Let's accelerate that a little bit, and you see the first result. That's a pretty natural look, but you can see very nicely that the background is nice and blurry. And it's very important to check out the edges where it transitions from in focus to autofocus. And yeah, when I look at it here on the small screen, it looks pretty good. Pretty good, no problems with those transitions. Of course, you need to also look at it on the big screen, which we're going to do a little bit later. Now let's switch to the next mode, which is the studio lighting. 3, 2, 1, and doesn't look that bad. It's pretty okay.
Next mode is contour lighting. 3, 2, 1. And this one, not sure. Doesn't look that great. I was really excited about trying the stage light. It was really dramatic effect. 3, 2, and 1. And that just looks really bad. It's a really bad photo. And let's try that again with black and white. Ooh, and that also looks really bad. Alright, now so quickly, looking at this on the computer, you see a comparison of, let's say, the normal photo, the normal JPEG without an effect applied, and afterwards you always see the effect. So this is just normal first picture that I took, and if I click to the right, you will see the portrait effect. I think that works quite well. You see that the background is nice and out of focus, the focus on my face remains quite nice, and you also see that around the edges where you have the transition from in focus to out of focus, there's no weird stuff happening. It looks pretty good. The hair, there's a little bit of complication, but you only see that if I jump back and forth all the time. You see that, for example, there's a little small hair here which I'm losing when I go to the portrait mode. But that's not a big issue. I actually like the portrait mode. But the portrait lighting I do not like that much. The first one is pretty okay, the studio light. So here's without an effect applied, and then this is the portrait light effect. So you see that the shadows are a little bit brighter. It looks a little bit softer, as if it was photographed with a softbox straight from the front. The next one is the contour effect, and this one is without the effect, and here you see the effect. And I really don't like that much. So it's a much higher contrast, but it seems like it's only applying it to the face, not even on the neck it is applied, and that looks kind of weird. It's also crushing the darks, so making them much darker. You see that in my beard if I jump back and forth. Yeah, don't like the effect at all. But it gets even worse when you look at the stage light effect. So this is without any effect, and here you have the stage light with color. It looks totally artificial, looks like a very bad Photoshop job. And yeah, equally bad in black and white, without the effect and with the effect. So yeah, I have to say it's still in better mode, so I'm not gonna be too harsh, but I have to say I'm not really satisfied with the portrait lighting. The portrait mode in general was cool with blurring the background, but the lighting is not there yet. But I think it's a cool, innovative first step, and let's see where we stand with that in a few years to come. So after trying out the photo modes in the studio, we went to the skate park, or I went to the skate park, and I tried out the video mode. I found this guy who was a pretty decent biker, and we tried some different video setups. First of all, we tried 240 frames per second. The iPhone 7 can do that at 720p, whereas the iPhone 8 Plus can do it at Full HD 1080p. Let's see if we can see the difference. First up, iPhone 7. You can see that it's not, a lot of detail. You can see that it's only 720p, and you can see here that the focus starts to pump a little bit. It's looking for, finding the focus. Now, let's see how the iPhone 8 Plus is doing. And surprisingly, I also don't see a lot of detail in here, and it also has some problems here with finding the focus, and it even looks a little bit worse than the iPhone 7. So that was really disappointing. Next up was 30 frames per second at 4K with the iPhone 7, or 60 frames per second at 4K also with the iPhone 8 Plus. And here you could see, of course with the iPhone 7 you couldn't really slow it down, whereas with the iPhone 8 Plus, well, you can slow it down a little bit, which is cool at this high resolution. So that's an improvement, but it's not huge. I also wasn't too happy with the autofocus there at the 4K. So overall, my summary: if you look at the portrait lighting, it wasn't all that great. It was just the portrait mode, which was great, and that already existed in the iPhone 7. With the video, well, the 240 frames per second in Full HD didn't work that well on the iPhone 8 Plus, and well, the 4K, that was cool, but I'm not sure it's a reason to switch if you have an iPhone 7. I don't think there's a reason to switch to an iPhone 8 Plus. So stay on your iPhone 7, wait for another one, maybe the iPhone 10, or maybe even an iPhone that comes out later. Let's see how the iPhone 10 will do. If, however, you're on an iPhone 6 or an iPhone 5, and maybe your plan is renewing or something, then you might really give it some consideration, to upgrade. And yeah, I think that's kind of my summary that I took out for myself. I have the iPhone 7, so I'm not gonna stay with the iPhone 8 Plus. I'm going to try the iPhone 10 next, so let's see.
I hope you liked this video about the new iPhone 8 Plus, this little test from the viewpoint of a photographer and cinematographer. If you liked it, then please subscribe to the channel. It's a brand new channel, this English channel. I have another one which is in German, but a lot of people have asked me, can you also do videos in English? So I did it, and I'm going to be posting videos every week now. Saturday or Sunday I'm going to put up new videos, so please subscribe, comment and like if you like what you saw.